Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new season of Inside FNATIC'S Brush as 2026 brings us a new season of LEC. The winter split has now become the LEC Versus, with two teams from the ERLs who have been invited. Los Ratones, who have been invited for their performance over the year, and K-Corp Blue, who have won the summer edition of the ERL. As for Fnatic, they've made 3 big changes into their team, and they're looking to make a big impression as they start the season facing Los Ratones, SK Gaming, and NAVI. Let's see what happened. Opening with Los Ratones, who was the team to beat. Obviously, they had quite an impressive year in 2025, but coming into the LEC, this was supposed to be the big hurdle. And for Fnatic, this was the way to prove themselves and enter with a bang. Going into the draft, the teams actually go for a similar profile, scaling with good skirmishing and teamfighting options, and also good early game dive opportunities. And surprisingly enough, this game was rather quiet for most of the time. Both teams trading kills here and there, Fnatic getting a little fright with a dive by LR in the bot lane, and both teams also exchanging global objectives. It's only towards the 20th minute that actually things started to break out, with a overextension from Los Ratones and a bad re-engage from Velia, where Fnatic just wipes Los Ratones and opens the map and gains a much better gold advantage. From there on out, Fnatic doesn't really let go of their advantage. They just push steadily across each lane, hitting the turrets and punishing Los Ratones for each of their missed position, eventually ending the game after 32 minutes. While not the most impressive and exciting game, it was still nice to see Fnatic have a steady approach into winning the game. Empiros was definitely the pillar here, eventually scoring a solo kill against the boss and having pixel perfect TPs to join into the team fights and ulti enemies into the backline. With a first win secured into the entry of the LEC Versus, it was time to face SK Gaming. Now, SK Gaming went with a very interesting approach for their roster this year, putting in their trust into MickeyX and his vision, who brought in Wonder, Leader notably, to have the team that will be called MickeyX and Friends. While not a lot of people are putting any hope into this team, there's still quite a lot of veterans and experience across from top to bottom. Looking at the draft, Fnatic goes for a similar profile than their previous game, with some scaling and teamfight opportunities. However, SK answers really well, notably with a cannon to counter the Renekton and a good composition to completely destabilize Fnatic into the teamfights. As expected, Fnatic runs into their major issue, a top lane that will not win its matchup, and an impossibility to set up proper ganks except for bot lane. Fnatic try as best as possible to somewhat execute their game plan, but SK are much faster to answer while also having much more space to execute their plan with a better draft. Wunder is dominating his matchup, Leader is on his very comfortable champion, and the bot lane is the only one trying to make something happen, unfortunately without being successful. As the game goes on, SK will completely dominate the teamfights and catch Fnatic at every turn. Yopa's Varus is an absolute threat that deals a gazillion damage every time he hits his arrow. A 9k gold disadvantage will prove itself unsurmountable for Fnatic, who lose their Nexus after 28 minutes. All in all, it's the classic first game of the season Fnatic versus SK, where SK manages to get the win over Fnatic. Here, the main issues were the draft, the execution, and overall a proper and stable game plan. Props to SK, they executed really well. Yopa was incredibly impressive on his Varus and just completely dominated every skirmish and teamfight he took part in. Heading into the final game of the first week, Fnatic would have to face NAVI. This year, NAVI is actually offering us quite a competitive and exciting team, with Mainter and Rylish coming in as rookies, Kobe fitting into the mid lane straight from Fnatic and completing the bot lane, Sandy and Paris, two young prospects who are looking to prove themselves after a disappointing 2025 season. And so far, they've been quite impressive, dominating their first two games and looking to end the first week at a 3-0. Jumping into the draft, and NAVI offers something similar that we've seen in their first two games, especially with Rylish, who's very comfortable in playing the Ambessa, which allows him to fit within the same team, Ambessa and Cassante, two massive threats. Fnatic tried to change it up a little bit with Rumble in the top lane, Azir for Vladdy, and Upset on Corki. The plan stays the same, however, scale and pray for the best. Unfortunately, Fnatic doesn't do anything into the early game, which is quite surprising, especially when you draft a Jarvan 4 who tries to get stuff going on across the map. Instead, it is NAVI who are making the moves and who are being very successful at it, replicating their formula that they've had in the first two games, again against Fnatic. Very similar to their previous game, Fnatic is suffering a 9k gold deficit as NAVI is knocking on their base at 27 minutes. However, a few mistakes in there, notably around the Baron, will allow Fnatic to slowly creep back into the game and get some valuable shutdowns, especially with the scaling comp. Another teamfight around Drake will actually help Fnatic stabilize their gold as they completely demolish this teamfight with a good combination with Razork and Imperios' ult and Vladdy hitting a beautiful Shurima shuffle against the double engage of NAVI. With a full build Corki, Fnatic is not afraid now to step up to NAVI, and once again, for another Drake, Fnatic will manage to outplay NAVI's attempt of engaging onto the team and wipe them, finally bringing back the game into their favor, closing it and destroying NAVI's Nexus. This was an insane game of League of Legends. It looked really dire for Fnatic, who is suffering from their lack of early game playstyle and just relying on their scaling. Thankfully, NAVI's mistakes enabled Fnatic to click on their late game and have the Azir and Corki really destroy the front line of NAVI. Fnatic ended their first week with a 2-1, but with a lot of issues within the team. Both rookies really suffered individually, Imperios dying on one-on-ones and Lostpat looking a little bit lost, not really connecting with his jungler. Razork is lacking to find good opportunities into the early game, even with early game champions. It's clear that they don't have a clear game plan on how to find these advantages and help the team stabilize and gain that advantage. Vladdy and Upset have been overall correct, in my opinion, in these three games. Vladdy especially being extremely aggressive against NAVI and trying to find those early game opportunities for Fnatic and not just roll and die over. Now the big focus will be how does Fnatic bounce from this disappointing week 1, especially going into week 2 as they're going to face one of the favorites, Mad Lions Koi. As I mentioned, the silver lining with this team is that they look like they're very hard workers and that they're hungry to get those wins and prove themselves individually. Now let's hope that the practice going into the second week is being successful and providing the right tools and feedback to fill in those issues that they faced into the first week and show a much more solid face going into the second one. Anyways, if you watched up until here, I appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like and a follow, and I'll be back for the second week of the LEC. Until then, always Fnatic. Bye-bye.